the next episode of our Mental Health and Wellbeing in COVID-19 webinar series. My name is Theron Knightenfit and I am your host. Today we have a really exciting guest with us. We have a medical doctor, Dr. KHANYILE, but I will explain and introduce her in a little bit more detail a little bit later. Just a reminder about what this series is all about, what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to provide you, the viewer, with tips, tricks, tools, and resources to effectively handle the moment that we're in, but not just this moment, the world that is coming at us into the future as we are in these uncertain and unprecedented times. So essentially what this webinar series is all about is helping you to flourish psychologically both now and into the future. That's what it's all about. It has been brought to you by Mygrow, the emotional intelligence platform, and we have made a free subscription available to everybody who has logged in and been part of this webinar series. So make sure you go to mygrow.me to get your access to Mygrow, to the emotional intelligence platform. Essentially, the set of skills that we need to effectively handle and manage life is a set of emotional competencies. And that's what we do at Mygrow. We build, we develop those competencies in you. So if you want to flourish into the future, this is how you're going to do it. Make sure you go and get access to that free trial. Of course, all the other resources that we have made available throughout each of these different episodes, they're all there as well on the Mygrow platform. You can go and get access to some of the resources that we've actively spoken about in these different episodes. Okay, so quick recap on the previous episode before we keep going. We unpacked the EQ skill of self-actualization, that sub-skill underneath the umbrella of self-perception, how we see ourselves. And you'll remember that self-actualization is that skill that helps us to strive to achieve our personal goals and to actualize our own potential. That's what self-actualization is. We spent a bit of time talking about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset from Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford. This construct, this idea of fixed mindset being one where you don't see the ability to grow beyond what you have at your disposal, and then a growth mindset, which is very much about seeing every opportunity as a chance for growth. If you didn't get a chance to go look at that episode, please go and look at it. We chatted with Alice Teutsch, the artist who put together that lockdown challenge, and we unpacked the idea of art and the chance to just play as being the perfect way in which to get perhaps some catharsis for this moment and to reinforce those neural pathways that help with flexibility, which of course is another EQ skill. The key questions we asked in that episode was, what does a fixed mindset look like for you in this moment as you're struggling with some of the things that you have to deal with in this unprecedented time? What does a fixed mindset look like for you? And then of course the flip side of that question, or the other question, is what could a growth mindset look like for you? So that's what we covered in the last episode. Today, in this episode, we're looking at the connection between mental and physical health. We've spent a few episodes in the past looking at this connection, the heart-mind connection, or the body-mind connection, which we've spoken about with stress management and a number of other things. We've chatted about emotional hygiene, different episodes. So we have cycled through this idea a few different times, and today we're going to be coming at it from a slightly different angle again. We're going to be talking about this really big word, psychoneuroimmunology, and I'll get there in a second. It's quite an interesting, fascinating field of study. We're going to look at 3 experiments from that field to make the point, and then we're going to have a chat with Dr. KHANYILE, as I mentioned. Okay, so psychoneuroimmunology. Essentially, it's the study of the interaction between psychological processes and the nervous and immune systems in the human body. So let's dive in and look at a couple of different experiments around this field. First one of the early ones in this whole field was done by Macdonald and Yagi, I think that's how you pronounce it, back in 1960. So quite a while back, but a really important experiment because of the tone and the precedent and sort of the important findings that came out of it. It was essentially an experiment that was looking at what happens to us in our immune systems as a result of stress. So it was done with a group of people in a military context, and they were put into 2 groups, and I guess they were switchboard operators or switchboard repair people, technical repair people, I don't know what they were. But the task that was given to them was for an hour to just fix this switchboard, this inoperable switchboard that wasn't working. Just fix it, tinker with it, make it work, whatever the brief was. And the one group was just given that to do, and that's all they did. One at a time, they try to fix the switchboard, and then now that's the end of the experiment for them. The other group while they were doing it, one at a time, but while they were doing this, they were made to believe that they had inadvertently set off some explosion that had killed someone. Okay, so pretty hectic experiment. This is before the days of ethics in some of these experiments, early 60s. And then they essentially looked at what was going on in the bloodstream of these different people. So they had taken a baseline sample from these participants of their blood, and then a week later they took blood again and they measured the white blood cell count, specifically a certain kind of blood cell, which I think I'm pronouncing correctly, eosinophils, which are very much important. They're responsible for fighting infection. This is what they found. The participants who had been in the group that had been made to believe that they had killed someone, they had a 30% drop in this specific blood cell in their blood sample a week later. So what does that mean? That means essentially their immune system had been compromised as a result of the stress that they had encountered in that experiment. Being led to believe that they had killed somebody had an impact on their immune system. Fascinating. Okay, let's dive into the next experiment. This is a couple of years later, mid-70s. Richard Ader and Nicholas Cohen, two psychologists, wanted to see what would happen if they conditioned rats to, well, let me just explain what happened. Essentially, they took a group of rats and they fed them sugar water with this chemical called CYTOXAN in it. Now, CYTOXAN has a number of different things that it does, but one of them is it impacts and hinders and impairs immune systems. That's what this drug or this chemical does. So they mixed this chemical into sugar water and they fed it to the rats. Now, of course, this drug will damage their immune system. So that's what they saw. But what these researchers were looking at exploring was the connection, the association between the taste and the impacts of this drug. And of course, no surprise, when they gave this drug to the rats, they died and they had huge health problems and immune system issues. But when they started taking this drug out, or this chemical, should I say, out of that mixture and just fed them just the sugar water, they continued to exhibit the same symptoms as they had when they were actually ingesting this CYTOXAN. So just the association of the taste of sugar water had programmed them neurologically to release a stimulus into their body that made them essentially unhealthy. Their immune systems were attacked, even though they were not having this drug anymore. Fascinating. And of course, they saw the same results and some of the rats even died. Okay, third research experiment, real quick. This is much more recent. This is late 90s. This was done with a group of dental students. 3 days before some pretty important exams, they were given a small wound, like from a pin, not a pinprick, a needle, an injection prick in their mouth, just to create this tiny little wound. And then they monitored how long it took them to heal from that tiny little wound. Don't forget, 3 days before their exams. They then repeated that same experiment in the middle of the summer holidays. And this is what they found. During that moment of high stress leading up to the exams, it took 40% longer for those wounds to heal. During the summer holidays, 40% shorter. The impact of stress, the impact of what's happening for them in the psychological and an emotional space actually had an impact on what was happening with their immune system. As I say, this is a very well documented field of study and a fascinating field of study. Now, as a person who comes from the field of EQ and the impact of EQ in our daily lives and the way that we work, the impact of what is happening for us psychologically and emotionally in the way we manage the relationship with ourselves and the relationship with the world around us. Of course, this stuff is just completely right up my alley. Now, it seems to me, though, that there is not just a connection between mental health and physical health, but there's actually a connection the other way around as well. Now, I don't have studies to prove this. I just have my own anecdotal experience. So take it for what it is, but I'm sure you may resonate with this. A couple of years back, in fact, last year, but the one I'm thinking about was about 10 years ago, I got sick during flu season and I was sick for however long it took, and I was fighting my way back, and my immune system obviously took a major dive. And just as I got better, I got hit with the next bug. And it was about a 4-month period where I just could not meaningfully get better. And the impact that that had on me psychologically was massive. My motivation, my general sense of well-being, it really took a knock. And I remembered that thinking, let me never have another year like this, or never a sickness season like this where I just could not get on top of it. Perhaps you've had an experience like that yourself, where your actual physical health has a knock-on effect in your mental health. Now, if that's the case, and if we can see from psychoneuroimmunology, there is an impact the other way around, we get into this downward spiral. So for me, it's super relevant for this moment that we're in right now, because sure, there's this physical health threat, coronavirus, and then as we have been chatting through this webinar series and looking at all the collateral damage that comes psychologically and emotionally, it's a perfect storm again where these things can connect and really get us into a downward spiral. So that's why we have a guest today who's a medical doctor. We've chatted to a lot of psychologists throughout this series, but today we're chatting with a medical doctor to chat around some of the dynamics, health-wise, physical health-wise, around what may be happening for us at this time. And it's my belief, maybe wrong, but it's my belief that we are now more susceptible to other illness, not just catching this virus, because of the impact psychologically that's happening. And if the field of psychoneuroimmunology has anything to teach us, then I guess it's not just my opinion. It's true. So let's get Dr. KHANYILE on. Dr. KHANYILE is a medical officer working in a hospital in Johannesburg. She's also the Vice President of Mental Matters, which is an organization that tries to educate and just open up the conversation around life balance and well-being, and tries to destigmatize mental illness amongst young people and young professionals. So she's a medical doctor, can speak very authoritatively to the health impacts, physiologically for us, but she has a strong interest in the mental side as well. So let's get her on. Dr. KHANYILE, can you hear me? Are you there? There you are. Welcome to the show today. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I am currently healthy and mentally healthy too. So can't complain. Anyway, as I said, thank you so much for being in this show with us today. First question, let me just ask you why, as a medical doctor, why is the mental health side of things so interesting for you? Why is this a passion for you?
So my passion for mental health initially began as a young child because I saw a lot of family members around me suffering from mental illness, and I could never understand why different people were treated differently. I come from a very different family. So my one family is African, and we believe a lot in the church as well as traditional medicines in terms of healing. And the other side of my family were colored. So there's a whole different way of treating mental illness and the way that people act. Then moving on into internship and furthering my medical studies, I started realizing the effect of burnout and how so many of my colleagues were just not okay. Sometimes even myself, but what were the differences between the two of us? Why could some be more resilient than others? And how did it filter to other young professionals? So I've really been engaging in conversation, trying to get people to understand that what are the things that are incorporated into my mental health that can help me become stronger, more resilient, and also contribute to society in a way that's not just positive for the society I'm in, but also for myself.
Okay, so obviously a very personally vested interest in this, and also as you look around to those around you, your community, I'm assuming other med students with you, medical school and that whole season of life, I can only imagine that's super hectic. So there's been a personal interest. What has been the connection, or let me say, how have you seen these things connected in your work as a doctor?
So as you know, as a medical professional, predominantly we are taught around physical or the biological changes that occur during dis-ease. So because of that, we see, how you have the physiology of the body altered by disease to cause pathophysiology. We have to learn about the complications, not just the presenting, but the short-term and the long-term complications of illness. And a lot of the time, when I got further into my degree, we started realizing that a large part of the psychological and social aspect is being ignored, and people just keep coming back. So what we've realized is if we don't take a holistic biopsychosocial approach to treating an illness, we are actually never going to win, because if a person needs to take medication, but they are stressed about the fact that they don't have any food because they need to eat with this medication, they won't be able to heal. If someone is experiencing mental illness and they need to, for example, go to different appointments, but they also have to stress about work, they have so many triggers in their life that are precipitating their illness, we're never going to be able to manage the physical condition, because it's just going to be a cycle that is going to continue viciously. So it really, as part of my work, has been something that I've really advocated for, because I've seen the changes that I've made just by thinking about, well, when this person goes home, is this plan I'm asking them to do going to work for their life? Many a time I've worked with children, and I'm currently working in the pediatric environment, but different patient populations, especially people who are in impoverished societies, mental illness, heart disease, strokes, a lot of diseases concerned with stress really are rife, because people aren't taught how to deal properly with their stresses, whether they're normal or abnormal in terms of grief, trauma, etc. And because of that, we're seeing multiple recurrences. We're seeing the effect of people acting out on those stresses. People have people turning to substances, which then causes trauma in other settings. So if people are not able to deal with their mental health adequately, it ultimately will lead to physical ramifications wider than maybe just the person themselves.
Yeah. And then the perspective I've been taking on this is that and as you're saying it's this vicious cycle. It precipitates more of the same, and it's what we see from this field of psychoneuroimmunology. It's such a great word, isn't it? I think I said it about 12 times.
I think you must say it like 5 times quickly in a row.
Yeah. And what we can see there is that there is then an impact on the physical health again. So I mean, the big ones from my experience and my research are heart disease, cardiovascular issues, immune system stuff as well, obesity, perhaps even, and then of course that comes with, type 2 diabetes or whatever. Can you speak to that in particular, that the mental health has a direct knock-on impact on our physical health and then goes on to impact our mental health again?
So definitely, I mean, there's so many characterizations of mood disorders, anxiety disorders, etc. that are in the diagnostic manual that we use, DSM-5, to classify mental illness. But when I like to break it down into symptoms, 5 big groups that affect anyone, whether you have mental illness or not. So the first one we can look at is something like immunology, which is what we're talking about, and healing. And a lot of the stress hormones that get released when someone is experiencing an acute stressor, when you have exams coming up, when someone has passed away and you're dealing with that grief, you release cortisol, and cortisol is the primary stress hormone. So the reason you have weakening on your immunity and difficulty wound healing is because cortisol primarily increases the glucose, which is the sugar in your body. And when glucose is around for too long in too high levels, that can predispose you to wound healing that becomes delayed, because it impacts the vascularity, so the blood supply to different areas that need healing. That also includes your heart. So if you already have some underlying existing illness, you're going to precipitate that and worsen that. You also have impacts to, for example, your concentration levels, because your cortisol throws your serotonin, it throws your dopamine out of whack, because in your body you're experiencing a fight or flight response because of that sympathetic activation. Your concentration, it's important to know with cortisol in the acute session is important. It helps you focus better. It helps you, really think and prioritize important information. But over a long period of time, it can weaken your ability to remember things, to really focus and concentrate on things. When we look at eating habits as well, cortisol, because it increases your glucose, you need a lot more to sustain that. So you find that you're eating more, you're eating higher carbs, you're eating higher glucose containing foods, and that causes you to really eat a lot of things, predisposing you to type 2 diabetes and other associated lifestyle illnesses. And we must also remember, because of the stress that's associated, your blood pressure will go up. It might not be a lot, but in someone who's already baseline at a borderline high level, when you increase them, it can tip them over the edge into hypertension. And that's where you get predisposition to things like strokes, heart attacks, etc. The last one I want to just talk about is energy and sleep. So cortisol stimulates you, it keeps you awake. So things like caffeine as well. When people are stressed, they feel more sleepy because they're running, they're burning out, they're tired, they drink caffeine, and that further exacerbates your sleep disturbance. Your stress also is throwing off the hormones, like I said, and it's important to note that things like serotonin actually help you sleep better. Dopamine, your endorphins help you sleep better and ensure that you maintain easy movement in and out of your sleep cycles. So those are just some big groups that we can talk about, but it's important to note that I just spoke about stress. We haven't gone into the other aspects such as mood disorders like psychosis and depression. We haven't spoken about significant anxiety, etc. But I spoke about stress particularly because I think a lot of people with coronavirus and people getting COVID-19 feeling anxious, feeling worried, not sure about what's going to happen in the future, increasing their stress levels above what they're used to, and immunity and all of the things I spoke about becoming an issue.
And then the irony, of course, is we get anxious about catching this virus, but we don't catch this virus because we're all in lockdown, or we're doing whatever we can, social distancing. But it doesn't mean our immune system hasn't been impacted, and therefore we're susceptible to something else. So for me, it's fascinating. It's like, we protect ourselves here, but just the moment makes us vulnerable here.
And that's why it's important as someone
that's super interesting. Thank you so much.
And that's why it's important as someone who is going through a period like this. We need to be aware of the changes in our body. We need to see, okay, my sleeping habits are out of whack. My eating habits are changing. How is that going to affect me in the long term? Because once you start to notice this, you can implement changes to make sure that you at least have some kind of control over the situation.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go there. Let's get practical. Let's talk changes. What can we do? We all know that we've got to wash our hands for 20 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever it is now, and we've got to stay 6 meters apart. We know what to do not to get coronavirus. You just leave the TV on for more than 10 minutes and you'll get some PSA telling you again what you need to do. But what can we do around the rest of our health? What kind of stuff can we do? What does that mean for us? Does it mean we just got to make sure our sleep is long? Or, what other practical tips can you give us for protecting our physical health, quite apart from COVID-19?
So I love that there are very simple, practical, easy steps that anyone can follow, especially in a period like now. Number one is something as simple as your sleeping habits. Make sure that you sleep at the same time and you wake up at the same time as if you were going to work. I think because a lot of people have been staying at home, they don't have to sit in traffic, you don't have to worry about making it to particular meetings at a particular time. You can just log on in your pajamas and put on a shirt over. You losing out on that extra time where you actually have to prepare and wake yourself up. So wake up at the same time and sleep at the same time every day, or as often as you can. The reason is your circadian rhythms in your body also assist with your mood. And they also help your body with memory retention and concentration, really storing that information to make it easier for you to work. So if you set your times appropriately, sometimes even taking a nap, within 90-minute cycles. And I say that because a sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So if you feel sleepy, set your alarm for 90 minutes, take that nap and wake up, and don't go back to sleep. If you have to get up out of bed, like walk to the kitchen, drink water, do something to wake yourself up. The second thing I think you could do with regards to your immunity is people always want to take supplements and they need to take this concentrate and that. And I think it's very simple. We just need to be more aware of what we eat when it comes to our immunity. So things like drinking water regularly. You don't have to drink 8 glasses of water. Also because, we're different. We have different body types. So I am a smaller person. Someone is a bigger person. 8 glasses of water for me might be a lot. And the recommendation I always say is at least 250 mils of water. And then for every 10 kilograms you weigh, add an extra 250 mils. That way, you're drinking enough water for your body type. You're not overworking your kidneys, because you don't have to. You're sitting indoors. If you're exercising, just factor that in as well. And then make sure that your immunity really relies on your movement. So the more you're moving, the stronger your body is. But you're also, that stress that you put on your body is enough to strengthen your immunity, but not enough to cause, the weakened immunity that we find at this time. You'll actually feel that you feel quite good after a little bit of a workout, even if it's 15 minutes. Walk around, skip on the spot, run on the spot, chase someone. I don't know if you have a yard, run after your dog. That could be something that really gives you a little boost in your immunity. I think with regards to our eating habits, we really need to make sure that we eat well. So it was easy when we didn't have a lockdown. You could just call Uber Eats, or you could call whatever, get some junk food in. It's important for now to make sure we buy things. And if you don't know how to cook, that was me before the lockdown. But Instagram, social media, the internet has been incredible with how many resources there are and easy recipes that you can learn that are healthy and nutritious, making sure you get the big groups: fruits, vegetables, and a lot of protein, starches, and carbohydrates, so that you have a well-rounded meal and you're able to build that immune system from the inside out.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. That's, it's a lot of that stuff we might know already. A lot of that stuff we just need to be reminded of. Some of that stuff I didn't even know. I always feel guilty about not drinking 8 glasses of water. So that's fascinating, that little formula you have. So thank you so much for that.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, I think for me, the bottom line here is we're trying to flourish in this time, not just survive.
Yes.
Not catching coronavirus might be about surviving, but flourishing goes well beyond that. Thriving in this moment with these conditions that have been handed to us, but also into the future, means we need to take another hard look at the way we live, our habits, our structures, things like our sleep patterns, things like our diet. I'm hoping that for many people, this has been a bit of a reset around not eating so much junk food, because you can't eat the junk food. You can't get it anymore. Yeah. I'm hoping many people have had the experience you've had of learning how to cook during this time. What a gift, what a gift it is. Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We're going to have to wrap it up here, but thank you. Your input has been really, really valuable.
Thank you very much. And always remember, the lockdown hasn't completely ended. We're still coming down in levels. So just make sure that you follow reputable news sources and just do what you need to do to stay safe and stay home.
Thanks, Dr. KHANYILE. What a great interview. What a great set of advice or set of tips and tricks to give us some advice on how we can really take this moment and thrive with our physical health, not just thinking through the lens of COVID-19 around physical health, but this interplay between our psychological and our mental and our, physical or biological health at this time. So that's pretty much it for today's episode. Don't forget to go and log in and get your free Mygrow trial. Mygrow is the platform that develops, measures, and tracks emotional intelligence and emotional competencies. And as I said before, this is the set of skills that will help you flourish into an uncertain and unprecedented future, a world that we are busy reimagining and recreating. You may be going through this alone, you may be with others. We're all in this together. We're all in this differently. I want to encourage you to remember to focus and keep a high priority, not just on your mental health, but on your physical health. I'll see you in the next episode.